Hey guys, welcome back. All right, I'm making a third video in under a week, which is bananas. I don't typically do this. I kind of like doing this. I haven't done lots of videos in a long time. Maybe I'll start rolling out some more to answer questions because I got a lot on the video a couple videos ago. So some of it was about print setup and how I set up the files for printing, but a lot of it was I want to see your print settings. What are your print settings? So I'm going to open Prusa Slic3r here, and we're going to take a look. And let's just get to it. Actually, I'm going to show you something. I actually did this entire video last night, 20-minute long video describing all kinds of things. And let's look at how that came out. Let me switch over here to this. Let's see how this came out. This is my video from last night. Yep. That was the audio. I went to upload it. I was like, oh, I better check really quick just to see. And that was my audio. Let's hope this one works because I'm going for it right now. I don't know why it did that. I've recorded tons of videos this way and never had one have an audio issue. Minus the fact that one time I had my microphone turned off. That was my fault. This was clearly some kind of glitch. My whole computer did update last night. When I woke up this morning, I had all the crazy updates, AI updates on Microsoft Bing, like a lot of them, basically like mid-journey type image creation, all kinds of scary stuff. So I don't know if it's awesome or it scares me, but also might be kind of awesome. I don't know. The fact that it can generate so many real images so quick is crazy. I'm going to do this for a different video, actually. Let's do that in a different video. Let me get to what I'm talking about here. Let me go back. I want to make sure I'm sharing my screen so you're not just looking at me talk. Scene. Okay, so that's my. I'm going to close that. Close this. We don't need to see me anymore. And ZBrush. I mean, not ZBrush. Prusa Slic3r. All right. So here is the left thigh in Prusa Slic3r. Now, I actually downloaded Cura again. I haven't used Cura for a very long time, but I used Cura for my Creality printers for quite a while, and I liked it. But then Prusa Slic3r came out, and I used it on my Prusa, and then I was like, maybe I can make a profile for my CR10S5. And I did, and it worked great. I loved it. And then since that time, they actually released profiles for a bunch of printers. So now Creality has a bunch of printers already pre-done in their profile. So this is starting with one of their pre-selected Creality printer profiles. So if I go to my printer settings, it says Creality CR10S5. I put 0.8 millimeter because I'm using a 0.8 millimeter nozzle. So we'll start here at the printer settings. And feel free, obviously, pause, look at my screen and see if there's anything that's different from your settings, or if you just want to take them in or write them down or whatever, pause it and check. I'll leave my screen open here for a minute. Print bed, we all know this, 500 millimeter print bed. Machine limits, 500 by 500. Maximum feed rates. These are feed rates. Let's see, apply limits, use for time estimates. So I don't mess with any of this. I haven't touched any of these things at all. Extruder, this is where I made a change. I changed this to 0.8 millimeter nozzle, and height limits 0.07 is the minimum. Maximum I just left open. I think 0 is kind of default. Let me see. Default 0. Yeah, just left out a default. I haven't messed with any of these things under extruder except for the nozzle diameter. Now, if you're using a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, you're going to have to double a lot of these settings as far as wall thickness and so forth. If you haven't swapped the nozzle and you're using a 0.4, I would recommend either a 0.8 or a 0.6. I put a 0.6 on one of my machines, and it's amazing. It works almost as fast as a 0.8 millimeter nozzle, but the detail is just a little better, and almost can't tell between a 0.4 and a 0.6, but the 0.6 is way faster. But 0.8 still looks good. It's just not quite as good as a 0.4. Can't tell from most of the stuff I make on this machine. But let's see, filament settings. I have my generic PLA, Creality. This is my setting that I did. This is for 0.8 millimeter nozzle. I'm using PLA Plus, which is a tiny bit warmer than regular PLA, I guess. I run this, my first layer at 215, other layers 225, and 215 works fine here, typically. But when I was doing these prints that were completely hollow, I found that it's printing so quickly that it was a little higher temperature worked better. I got a little bit better bonding between the layers, and it just flowed better. So turn this up just a little bit, 225. But again, this is pretty much for this setting specifically. Like if I was doing a regular print with multiple walls and all that, I'd probably turn this down to 215, maybe 220. And then if it's bad, I could dial it on the printer as it's going. I think I modded the extrusion multiplier a little bit. I think it was at 1. I put it at 1.1 just to bump it out. This was something I did a long time ago for the 0.8 millimeter nozzle. So I don't remember why I did that. I did it at some point. I remember changing it, but I don't remember what I was working on. But that's changed. But anyway, there's that. Let's see, cooling. Didn't do anything here. Fans on, auto. All this is the same. This, I haven't touched any of these. Filament overrides, none of these. Notes, nothing. Dependencies, nothing. Now, print settings. Here we go. So my layer height, 0.3 millimeter. First layer height, 0.35 millimeter. One thing that I love about Prusa Slic3r is you can do variable layer heights, which I did not use on these parts, but I do use it often. And you can go in and you can basically, you know, give it really high layer heights between areas that are not real detailed. And then when you have like a part that rounds over on the top or something, you can turn up the layers a lot right there. So you can get way finer layers over a curved surface that's over a top, so you have less layer lines. I love that about Prusa Slic3r. I don't know if they've added that to Cura yet, but they did not have that at the time. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Perimeters. Here's the magic number, time saver number right here. 1 perimeter. Again, if you're using a 0.4, you're probably going to want to do 2 perimeters, but 1 perimeter, that's it. Just like spiral vase mode basically does almost the same thing, except it's just a continuous print. This one still, it raises for each layer instead of just making a spiral. But same thickness as a spiral vase print. But spiral vase leaves the tops open, so you can't really use this on a lot of things. Any area that's facing completely vertical or completely horizontal on a top layer on spiral vase will just be completely open. So if you have little details that stick out, the tops will just be ignored. So just keep that in mind. But spiral vase is awesome. If you can use it for something, I recommend it. It's cool. Prints really fast. Horizontal shells. This, I think I said 4 layers on top the other day. I was wrong. It was 5. That's where the top layer starts to round over, and the more layers you do there, the more chances there are that your filament is going to have something to grip onto versus just falling inside the print. So I turned this up a little bit to 5. Bottom layers are 2. 2 seems to be fine for bottom layers. All of this, I think I turned off ensure vertical shell thickness. This one thickens up certain areas in the print. It doesn't really need it too much with this type of print, but when you turn it on, it'll make sure that you don't get holes in places, but it adds a lot of time to the print. So I just leave this off. I don't need it. I don't think I messed with anything else. Didn't do anything else with these. Infill. 0% infill. That is also what makes this go really fast. I'll come back to this, but if you need to do an infill and you still want it to be faster and use as little material as possible, there is in Prusa Slic3r one called lightning infill. It's in the fill pattern. And I'll come back to this in a minute because I want to show something before I change any of this. It's called lightning infill, and basically what it does is it builds out from the inside of the part. It'll stay almost completely hollow until it starts to get close to an overhang, that it starts making these little tendrils that come out from the walls. And they're real thin little things. You could probably snip them off really easily. The reason I don't like to do infill is because I don't want to have to clean up the inside of the print. It's a nightmare. I've had prints that I wanted to be hollow, but I had to use some infill to support areas, and cleaning it out sucks. So I just turn that off if I can help it. I'll come back to the lightning infill in a moment. Skirt and brim. I always use a brim on the CR10S5. It is really easy to take off. Once it's printed, it comes off super easy. Hardly, barely an inconvenience. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. And helps the print stay in place. So if you have a little corner, it'll keep it from lifting off. Really, it's just really helpful. Barely uses any filament. And it also lets me look at the print after I start it, because I never ever go in and set up my printer. I don't do all that crap with the paper and check it. I never do that. I just hit go. And like when I first got the printer, I did that to get it set up. But now I just hit print. Half the time I just walk out of the room. I'll come in like half an hour later and check on it. I don't watch it very often. But if I haven't used it in a little bit, or if I've done a big print, sometimes a big print will affect how the springs are working. So sometimes you need to dial it. The brim is great for that, because it'll start printing that brim and you can watch it. And if it's too tight or too loose, like the bed, I can reach under the bed and adjust it a little bit. This is because my printer does not have auto adjust on the nozzle. I just have to do it by hand. I don't care. Seems it works fine. I've printed hundreds of things with that printer and it's never given me a problem. But the brim is helpful because I can tell right away if it's too tight or too loose of between the nozzle and the bed. So live adjust for me. So there's that. I don't think I ever messed with any of this other stuff. Support material. On this piece, we're going to generate support material. However, if I can get away without doing it, I always do. That is on the contact distance here, 0.3 millimeter top contact, because the layer height, this is, all my layer heights are 0.3, so if I go lower, it starts to bond, because the 0.8 millimeter nozzle puts out a lot of filament that's really hot, and it will bond to the part. It makes it a nightmare to get the stupid supports off. So I left these alone. All the orange ones are what's been adjusted here. Pattern spacing. This is the pattern for the infill. It makes like a little back and forth, type pattern that raises up. It wants to do it like 2 millimeters. This really, really condensed thing, but it doesn't need that. It'll bridge 10 millimeters easily, so I just do a 10 millimeter spacing. It saves lots of time, saves lots of material, especially with the 0.8 millimeter nozzle. You're just pumping out a lot of material. So 10 millimeter spacing, and I'll show that on the bed here when I go through the layers. Top interface layers, the default is 3, which is heavy. I put it the lightest setting, which is 1, because again, 0.8 millimeter nozzle, if it's too close and too much, it bonds so bad. It's really hard to undo. So I put that on light. Support build plate only. That's typically for this. Every once in a while you need to do it the other way, but that's for a different video. Separation between object support, 70% or higher. You could go higher than this. With the 0.8 millimeter nozzle, if it's too close, you run the risk of your support material bonding to the side of your part, which is not fun to deal with. So 70 millimeters is like the minimum that I would recommend. You could go higher. I've done 100%, not 70 millimeters, sorry, 70%. You could do millimeters or percent. 70% is what I used here. You could do 100% and it'll be fine. It'll work totally fine. I actually kind of prefer that a little higher. I haven't messed with any of these. These are my default settings. I'll go through them so you can look at my screen just in case your stuff is different. Multiple extruders, I didn't mess with that. Advanced, nothing. Output options, nothing. Notes, 0. Dependencies, nothing. So now we'll go here. So this is our part. You'll notice this big green box here. That is a support material blocker, because what happens is if you're printing, it tries to make support material from the bed all the way up to these little overhangs, and it costs lots of time, literally like 9 hours or something extra at least to do that. 9 extra hours and way more material to print that support material. I think I've already sliced this, so here's what it looks like sliced. And you can see how I blocked all the material. So it supports this little bottom bit here, which if you come down, you can see when I was talking about the 10 millimeter support pattern, see how big these spaces are here? that's a 10 millimeter gap between these little blocks, which is plenty for this. And then the 70% spacing, that is this gap here between the part and the support material. But you can see that the support material is literally as thick as the print because I'm using the same amount of thickness because it's one layer. So doing this too heavy it's overkill. I could go probably even less than this. I could probably do, I'm guessing 15 millimeter would be fine for this. It would do the job for me. But that's that. Let's scroll to the top here. Now, these overhangs right here, you see these areas that are in red. That's an area that's going to get pretty finicky and probably start to fall through, which it did. This whole area was just like loose hairs. Doesn't matter because this is getting cut out, so I don't care. If you need to print a top like this, then you might want to use the lightning infill, which I can go into in a second. So now back to the whole thing with Cura. I loaded Cura in. I haven't used it in a long time, and I was like, I like the tree supports that it makes. I see that on people's prints. I was like, that's a good idea. I love how the specificity of the tree supports and how they're made is great. Prusa Slic3r does not have that. However, Prusa Slic3r does have variable layer heights, which is really good. So anyway, loaded Cura and went to load this file in, and it was so slow to load it, so slow to slice it. And it was a massive amount difference in time. So the time, and I didn't play with all the settings. I'm sure I could get it to dial down to this level, but the settings that it came in with, it was going to be like 2 days or something to print this part. And I was like, nope, I'm not even going to bother. I don't know how to do this right now, and I don't want to mess with it. So we're going to look at it just in Prusa. You could take these settings and probably apply them to, Simplify 3D or Cura or whatever slicer you like to use. Oh yeah, let's go back and look. So what did I mention before? The support material spacing. I think I talked about that. Oh yeah, the overhangs. So we go to print settings. If you want some support material, you go here. Not support material. I'm sorry, infill settings. Put this up. I don't know. You don't need a lot most of the time. I'm gonna do 10%, and then under fill pattern, go to the lightning, and let me see if this works. This might take a second to slice here. We'll see what it does. Did I even hit it? Is it slicing? There it goes. Now sometimes the lightning infill actually adds a lot of time, but it doesn't use a lot of material, which is nice, because if you got to clean up the inside of a part, it's it changes it quite a bit. So the lightning infill just added almost 9 hours to the print, which is a lot. So we'll look at it here. Almost 9 hours, but you see how it works. See, it just starts coming off of the wall. So the whole print's hollow real fast, and then right here it starts adding these little things. When it adds these, the actual the method that it's doing, it slows down a lot as the printer makes these weird little pieces. But you see how that grows like that? That's pretty cool. So if you need to have some support, but you want to remove it in the end, this is a way to do it. Again, adds a lot of time, but you can tell it's using very little material to do that support. It's really cool, right? Because my phone's going off as per usual. So that is that's kind of the deal there with that. So anyway, those are my basic settings. Let me do one. Let me turn off this. Let me delete this. I'm going to turn off the infill. Okay, we go back to 0 for infill, so we're back to kind of where we're at initially, and then I'm going to turn on. I'm going to take away this box. So now it'll do the support material all the way to the top. We're going to see the time difference here. It's probably going to be close to the time it takes to do it with that, the lightning infill. But this has no infill. Remember, I turned the infill off. So this is just support material on the outside for the full piece. It's a lot more material. Look at that. Just look how it goes all the way up to support this little thing. Now, look at that, 19 hours. So added 9 hours to the print, just to support these little edges. That's it. All this material just to support this little edge. So for me, I would just let this bottom edge be terrible, and then I would go in and just putty it, fix it. And that would take me no time. It'll take me, I don't know, 30 minutes to do that, tops. And look at that. That means that I can print both these pieces and save 18 hours worth of time and basically clean them both up at the same time. Okay, back to this one. So we're going to look at the part here because people ask about how I close the part up. Basically what I do is in ZBrush, I select all this inside wall and just remove it. And remove the inside here. And then I hit close holes, and then it bridges up all of this. Now I kind of had to sculpt this. You can tell it's been sculpted a little bit, and it wasn't very careful because it doesn't matter. You have to kind of re-sculpt this stuff into a shape so you don't have like a big blob. I could have just extended the whole thing up in a tube, which would have worked fine as well. And you know, bridge this and just had like a tube to cut away, which might actually even printed faster. I don't know. On the bottom, I did the same thing. I took the opening that was capped and I extruded it down. And then this flat bottom, I flattened it in ZBrush, but I ended up trimming it a little more in the slicer. So you can come to this tool here, the cut tool, and come down and you go like this and see there's a little bit left there. I'm going to get rid of the lower, perform cut. So you see how it cuts it, and it makes a nice flat base that will really stick to the bed well. And I'm gonna turn off support material to see. We'll slice this down, see how fast this will go if I just do it with no supports. So the shins that I did were, I think they were under 9 hours each. And then the thighs, this thigh was a little longer than the other thigh for some reason. I think this one was about, this thigh I think was closer to 10 hours, and then the other thigh was like 9 hours and 20 minutes, and then the shins were 8 hours and something. So get an idea of how quick that prints. So look at that. No support material, 9 hours. With support material, an extra 10 hours. Doubles the print time just to do that. So yeah, like I said, I need a little support here. Another thing you can do is if you're savvy with the 3D stuff, I should have done this myself, is I could have added a few little standoffs here in the 3D software to act as support material. Like I could have basically integrated a support material into the part and saved all of this nonsense, and it probably would have saved a good half hour of print time. But yeah, anyway, those are my settings, a little bit of thoughts on this. If you want me to come do a video, maybe I can grab some parts off the internet that aren't mine and then show how I would convert them to be hollow like this, if that's helpful. I use ZBrush for this. Blender would be able to do the same thing. Maya or 3 Studio Max would also be able to do the same thing. I'm sure that any of the major 3D, polygon modeling type kits, modeling packages would be able to do this. Fusion, if you're custom making your part, you could do this. You can close parts in Fusion like this, but like to grab a part off the internet and close it, I don't think you can do in Fusion. But Blender is a free option that you should be able to do this. I've never tried it in there, but I know it has the tools. So anyways, hopefully that was useful here. Let me click back over, and hopefully that was useful. Hopefully my audio didn't just fart out somewhere in the middle of this. We'll see. But anyway, I got to get back to work here, and hopefully that's useful. And I said that 5 times. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye!